All right, so I skipped one slide, so I'll talk backwards. So I wanted to talk about feeling powerless a little bit, right? And this kind of goes along what Nancy was saying. So much like your loved one with Parkinson's, as caregivers, we can find also a decreased quality in life, a decline in psychological health, increased stress, even depression and anxiety. So we wonder, how can we combat that? How can we manage that, especially as the years go on and the fears kind of take hold, and maybe we have some anxiety about what the future holds. So I want to talk a little bit about how we can be more self-empowered and focus on what we can control so that we are not burdened by burnout, depression, powerlessness. And feeling powerless is the #1 contributor to burnout and depression. It's an easy trap that we can fall into as caregivers, especially if you feel stuck in a role that you didn't expect. It's as if it's a marriage, it's in happiness and in health and in sickness. But we, when we're 25, 22 years old and we get married, we're in love and everybody's beautiful and we have our health, and we don't think about all that's to come. Sometimes these things happen and they're not really expected. So, but no matter the situation, we have to be reminded that you're not powerless. Right? We can control what comes into our mind and how we think, especially when it comes to our state of mind. So we don't always get extra time or extra money or all the physical assistance that we would like, but we can always get more happiness and hope. We can really work on something like that. So you want to try and focus on what you can control. So you can't wish Parkinson's away. You can't force other family to show up and help when you need them. But rather than stressing out over these things that you don't have control over, you try and focus on what you can control. And that's reaction. Our reaction to these things is something that we can control.
Excuse me, John, could you remove that message that says this meeting is being recorded?
I clicked on mine and it went away.
Just click on got it.
What did you click? Continue?
Got it. Does it say got it on yours?
Yes.
You just click the word continue?
No, I got it.
Got it.
Got it? Oh, I
Yes.
don't have that.
Maybe continue.
Whatever it does. Okay, go ahead.
It went away.
Okay, so we want to embrace the caregiving choice, right? So you want to acknowledge that despite any resentment or burden you might feel, it's a conscious decision and choice that you've made to provide care. So you want to focus on the positive reasons behind your choice. Maybe you're providing care for a parent and you did it because they did it for you. Maybe you're doing it because it's your values, or it's an example you want to set for your children or your grandchildren. These deep, meaningful motivations can help you and sustain you through difficult times. And no one wants to feel like they're a burden, right? And no one wants to think they're a burden. So I like to say, don't think of it that way. If you're the person with Parkinson's who needs the help, you're setting an example. You want your children to care, your grandchildren to care for your children, and it's something that we want to set as an example. It's a beautiful example to set, to be able to care for someone, and see how, although that can be a difficult thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. And it's something that, you believe in because of your own values. Let's keep hitting the wrong one. You want to accept your feelings. So it's normal to get frustrated and angry and all the caregiving responsibilities and everything that's on your plate. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're an inadequate caregiver. These are all normal feelings that you kind of have to forgive yourself about. Everybody gets frustrated and has difficult times, and that's okay. It really has no bearing on how good of a job you're doing or the quality of the time you're spending. You want to try and applaud your efforts, right? Find ways to acknowledge yourself. If you're not getting external validation from other family or friends, you need to find ways to acknowledge and reward yourself. So remind yourself of the good you're doing. If you need something more concrete, maybe make a list. It's something that you can refer back to about all the things that you've done and the ways that your caregiving is making a positive difference. And then you can refer back to it if you have a nice list, so that when you start to feel low, it can help boost your mood. Does anyone do anything like that? I love to make lists. You can even make it as kind of like a journal. You want to celebrate small victories, right? So if you start to feel discouraged, remind yourself that all your efforts really do matter. You don't have to cure your loved one's illness to make a difference. You don't underestimate the importance of making your loved one feel safe, comfortable, loved, attended to. So these, the littlest of things, a smile on their face, even the littlest of things really make a difference. And then you want to also focus on yourself, right? And when I do talk to you guys and to other groups, I mention this a lot. We spend a lot of our lives focused on others, especially I see there's a lot of young ladies here. We spend our lives caring for others and doing for others, often to the point of where we detract from our own health. So you want to try and maintain personal relationships. I think one of the major problems we have now is isolation. The world is so isolated. We are so isolated, and COVID just made it 10 times worse. And as we retire, that's one of the biggest things that happens to people, is that become so isolated. It's important to keep friendships. Because they, and don't let them get shuffled and lost in while you're caregiving. These relationships can help sustain you, keep you positive. It's someone to lean on, to talk to. If it's difficult to leave the house, now everybody does Zoom. You can do Zoom, you can do phone calls, you can invite a friend over for tea or coffee. It's a good way to maintain a friendship. Staying connected to close friends is important. And trying to check in regularly, because otherwise it does grow distant, and then it almost starts to feel awkward if you haven't talked to somebody in a couple months. Like, why are you calling me now? What do you need? So it's eventually you're alone without a support structure if you don't keep checking in with people. You want to try and invest in other things other than caregiving that have meaning, if at all possible. Maybe have a hobby, maybe something with purpose, whether it's family, grandchildren, church, a favorite hobby, a career, if that's still something you're working on, but trying to have some sort of purpose, something that has a little meaning other than focusing just on the caregiving as the only thing that gives you meaning. And I really, in addition to the whole isolation piece, I feel like another thing that we have trouble with that causes a lot of anxiety and depression is not having this spiritual piece to our life. Spiritual reflection is so important to make time for, to spend time either with nature, or if you're a churchgoer, to make time to go to church or say a prayer, meditate, sing, anything that's kind of spiritual in nature, maybe literature or music, to identify what's meaningful to you and notice its place in your life. Find a spiritual connection or community if you don't already have one, and be aware of non-material aspects of life, like the beautiful sunset or the beautiful sunrise. Accepting help from others. This is a big one, right? That everybody has difficulty doing because they might not do it the right way, or they might not understand, or when I'm not there, it's not done right. I was talking to a woman just a couple of days ago who was here with her husband because he had a stroke. And she said, I can't have someone else come because no one can do it quite the way I can do it, or no one gets it right. But she's becoming burnt out, right? Because it's only her. You need to have other people sometimes be able to step in, and it's okay if they don't get it all right, because, you know, with time, it's, you know, it'll all figure itself out. So you want to try and say yes when people offer help. You know, if someone offers assistance, don't be shy about accepting it. They want to help. They feel helpless. They see you struggling and they want to lend out a hand. So letting people help allows them to feel good. If they feel good about supporting you and your loved one. Maybe you can have a list ready of small tasks that others can easily take care of, like picking up groceries or driving your loved one to an appointment, or just, you know, coming over for a cup of tea. Just, you know, try and accept as much help as you can, because it makes people feel good. And if you don't accept it, then they stop offering. And then when you really need it, then you're in trouble, right? You want to try and accept help as much as you can. You want to try and spread the responsibility if it need be. Enlist friends and family, get as many family members involved as possible. Even someone who's far away can help with making phone calls. Maybe you can divide up some caregiving tasks. One person takes care of the medical stuff, another person with finance and bills, another with grocery and errands. I know when my mother wasn't well, like I was the medical person and my brother was the handyman, kind of financial guy. So you try and, you know, and break that stuff up. Enlisting friends and family who live nearby that they can run errands, bring a hot meal, or even babysit your loved one, so you can take a well-deserved break. Some of you know this, my mother and my grandmother had Parkinson's, and I can remember my grandmother would live with us. So it was like, there were 4 sisters. So one week we had her, one week my aunt had her. And I can remember my mother having somebody come and babysit grandma and me, I guess, looking back now, so that they could go to a wedding. So they went to a wedding and someone came and they stayed with grandma and they stayed with me while they were, so they could go and have some fun. You want to try and relinquish some control. So you want to delegating is one thing, but trying to control every aspect of care is another. So people will be less likely to help you if you micromanage them, if you give them lots of orders and are insistent on things being done a particular way. You have to let go of some of that, and otherwise people really don't want to help you because they're not, you know, they're feeling like you're not really valuing their help. Sometimes setting up a regular check-in is helpful. So maybe a family member or a friend or volunteer from church or the senior center to call on a regular basis if you're feeling really isolated. It could be weekly, daily, as often as you need. That person can help to spread status updates if your loved one isn't well, coordinate with other family members and do things like that. And so there are also other kinds of care that you can kind of pay for if you're not, I don't know if you're familiar with respite care. So these are services that often you can get at like an assisted living facility. So they can range for a couple of days to even weeks. So I'll give you an example. I was going on vacation and I thought it would be a good idea to have my mom go to respite care for a week or 2 so my dad could get a break too. So I think we dropped her off on Saturday. Saturday was fine. Sunday was okay. Monday, I leave for vacation. I think by Tuesday morning, my father had brought my mother home. Why? Because he couldn't relinquish control. They didn't do the meds right. They didn't feed her at the right time. They didn't do this and this and this and that. And like, Dad, this was for you to take a break, not for you to go there and, you know, micromanage everything. So, respite cares can be a useful thing if you can let go a little bit. There's also adult daycare where you can drop off your loved one for a couple hours at a day. There they can get some socialization. They also have like, they often have some medical care, and there's a variety of activities and other services. Then there's the more private care aides where professionals who specialize in figuring out all the caregiving, they can help coordinate care and services. It can be a little more expensive, but also very useful. And then there's home health care. So these agencies provide home health aides. Some of them are through your insurance. Some of them are also privately paid. This is more short-term care if your loved one is ill. And some of these agencies also provide some short-term respite care. And then there's always more help. So if you're still feeling kind of burnt out, depressed, anxious, kind of struggling a little bit emotionally, talk to your doctor or another health professional, someone like me. Most therapists, social workers, clergy are trained to counsel people who are dealing with a wide range of physical and emotional issues. So they can also help you. And then you want to plan ahead. So so for planning ahead, so this is a little more, it's a little more of a morose kind of topic, but I can tell you from personal experience, having things done like funeral arrangements are a real stress relief for when you're actually in the moment. And that's for any of us really, you know, once we get to whether it's a certain illness or a certain age. I can't tell you how wonderful it was for me and my brother to go into the funeral homes and make all these arrangements for my parents while they were still pretty well, right? Because we went in, we were in a good mood. My parents were still well enough that, you know, it wasn't like depressing or sad, but we were able to get all those things done so that when my mom did pass, it wasn't this stressor of, oh my gosh, what do we do? Does she want a mass? Does she not want a mass? Is there awake? Is there not awake? What kind of casket do we get? Do we get a casket? Does she want to be cremated? What do we, all these questions that you don't think of. It's such a relief to have all that stuff kind of taken care of ahead of time. So a lot of it is really preparing for the future, and it's things that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but it's what a relief. The other day I was taking a walk and my friend was telling me her father bought like 6 plots, 1 plot for every kid and their spouse. She was like, it was like he had taken care of all of that stuff. So it was, it's a real stress relief. So if you have, find yourself an attorney, so you can deal with trusts and estates and wills and all that stuff. So you can have all that squared away. So it's one less thing you have to really worry about. And then you want to think about things like palliative care. So not a lot of people know what palliative care is. They think immediately hospice and death. And palliative care is not that at all. It's really comfort care aimed at optimizing quality of life for patients and families facing problems associated with life-threatening illness. So it could be even something like MS. It doesn't have to be Parkinson's, but it's like any kind of more chronic illness that you're going to have deal with for a long period of time. Palliative care is they're a nice group of people that can be really helpful. So through their focus is really about prevention and relief of suffering by means of early identification, assessment, treatment of pain and other problems, physical, psychosocial, spiritual. They're just a nice group of people that kind of come in and help provide a lot of support when you're not doing so well. They try and mitigate suffering as much as they can for people with serious complex illnesses. So it's not hospice. You don't have to be, close to death or anything. People can have palliative care for a number of years. So they're a nice group of people. So if at any point you're in a hospital setting and someone mentions palliative care, don't get scared. It doesn't mean anybody's, impending death, but they're just a nice group of people that can help. So I don't know a lot about advanced directives per se, and these different kind of wills and things, but they're things that you want to think about. They consist, so the advanced directive consists of a living will and healthcare power of attorney, so that when your loved one or yourself can't make the decision, you have someone that will make the decisions for you. The advanced directive provides guidance on what types of treatments you may want to receive in case of a future unknown medical emergency. They allow you to state who can speak on your behalf, and who can make medical decisions for you when you can't speak for yourself. And then there's something called called the POLST is the acronym, but it's so they're physician orders for life-sustaining treatment. So these are more about do not resuscitate, do not hospitalize, do not intubate, those kinds of things. And these are the POLST is done more towards end of life situations. And it deals with the current medical circumstance. So it's not really something that you would necessarily do or take care of right now. And these are things like also that deal with like feeding tubes and those kinds of things. And honestly, from personal experience, these are things you want to talk about because I had opinions, my father had opinions, my brother had opinions, and sometimes you just don't know. I can remember my mom clearly saying to me, "Oh, I would never want a feeding tube." And then her sister got sick and she said, "Well, I can't let her starve. The doctor said feeding tube." So then I remember thinking, so would she want a feeding tube or would she not want a feeding tube? So, and I should have just came out and asked her at the time, but I think I was probably 17. So I never made the question. So when it was time to determine, to decide on feeding tube, luckily I had my dad, I just let him make the decision. But, you really need to ask those questions aloud so that you really know what people want and what they, what their thoughts are. So last but not least, care for yourself, right? Remember that taking care of yourself is not a luxury. It really is a necessity. If you're burned out, you're going to become physically and emotionally unable to care for your loved one. And you don't want that. That's not useful. There's a difference between being busy and being productive. If you're not regularly taking time off to de-stress and recharge your batteries, you're going to end up getting less done in the long run. And after a break, hopefully you feel more energetic, focused, so that it quickly makes up for your relaxation time. And that's all I got. Do we have any questions? Has anyone given thoughts to any of these things? Have you guys kind of taken care of some of this stuff, or is it still?
Yeah, thanks very much. And you speak from a standpoint of experience. So obviously you've got great credibility.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just wondering, you covered a lot of different cares, and unfortunately I didn't write them all down. How many, if any, of those different in-facility cares, at-home cares, wherever they might be, are covered by Medicare, if any?
So not much is covered by Medicare, sadly. Like if you have you can get like a home health aide for a couple hours a week covered by Medicare if you have like a doctor's prescription. If you have Medicaid, which is different than Medicare, that you can get up to 40 hours a week covered by insurance or by Medicaid. And you can determine if you have an attorney, you can figure out the whole Medicaid versus Medicare situation. So Medicare covers very little. If you have like a long-term health plan, that helps, but those are super expensive. Not a lot of people have those.
Yeah, we have one, but whether, I guess, the devil's in the details. I would have to study the policy again. I think that covers more in-facility long-term living.
Yeah, and some of those cover things, but you have to have had like a certain length of hospital stay before they kind of even kick in. Yeah, Nancy, maybe you want to get a social worker on here one day to cover all these kinds of
That's a good idea.
topics. Yeah.
You'll send me the name of someone.
Well, probably Paige or one of those guys, right? We have a lot of really good, smart social workers here.
Good. I just want to ask you one question, which maybe it's unfair to ask because not quite sure how anyone would do it. I don't do it very well. You said we can control our state of mind.
Mm,
I have a problem with that. You know, I mean, I know all the things like, you know, oh, feeling blue, take a walk, get on the exercise cycle, call a friend, you know,
Yeah.
all that stuff. And I think, I don't know, you tell me, at the end of
Yeah.
the day, if you've done enough of it, the day wasn't so bad.
right, right. And I think some of it is habit forming up, you know, it's paying attention to your mind and where does it immediately go when when you're feeling stressed. And if you can work on that, on saying, oh, I did it again. I'm feeling a little stressed and immediately I went to the worst case scenario. Let me
Yeah.
backtrack, you know, let me work on that. So a lot of it is practice. And paying attention to the things that really help you. Like sometimes, you know, if I know that when I feel stressed, if I go talk to that person, I feel so much better. Or when I go exercise, I feel so much better. Or when I say a prayer, you know, whatever that is, you know, try and find differences among those things and see what works for you. And a lot of it is practice. Like there was a time in my life where I did more running than I do now. And whenever I felt, as the years went on and the more running I did, I realized that when I felt stressed, my first reaction was like, oh, I need a run. So, I mean, when I was 15 and stressed, that wasn't my first reaction. So it really is kind of like a habit, kind of like practice of, you know, doing something, whatever that is. And, you know, kind of like when people smoke cigarettes, right? They feel stressed. The first thing they do is like, oh, you know, if I light up a cigarette, that'll make me feel better. So it's all about habits.
Is Allie?
Yeah.
You?
She just
Hello.
walked, yeah, she walked in.
And does anybody have any other questions for Dr. Danner? So should we introduce Allie?
Sure.
Great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank
guys. Thank you.
Hey guys,
Well,
we've got a giant cord here. Do you see us walking over this giant cord? How's everyone doing?
Good, how are
Hanging
you?
in there.
Who have I got here? Mary Lou. Hi, Pat. Hi, Jan. Bill, Dorothy. Hi, folks. I guess I could take this off now. This is my face. Hi. Hi, everyone. I recognize some familiar faces. Good to see you all. I have talked about these topics before. Well, at least I've spoken about cognition and thinking before and language. I'm going to do it again, but hopefully in a different way. And I'm going to talk about social skills a little bit. That's something that I don't think I've ever spoken about. And I'm kind of excited to bring some awareness to that piece. So let me unshare. Oh, wait, do you guys see just me or the screen? You just me, right? Hold on one moment. So unfortunately, my slides aren't pretty, but they've got information. They've basically got talking points for me to talk to you about. Okay, so like I said, I want to talk to you a little bit about cognition or thinking and communication skills and social skills in people with Parkinson's disease. So when I talk about these topics, it's very general. Not every single person with Parkinson's has the same symptoms. And you guys know this from meeting anyone else besides your loved one or friend with Parkinson's, right? Everyone's different and everyone develops different symptoms at different times. And some people may not develop any of the symptoms I talk about at all. And some people may develop all of them. So it's just good to kind of be aware and think about these things and seek help if you need it. I don't think maybe I included that in these slides, but I think the most important thing to know is there is support. So as a speech language pathologist, that's me. I think there might be some people I've not met in person. I should have said that first, Nancy, I'm so sorry, but I'm a speech language pathologist at JFK. I hopped on here like, hey guys, you all know me, but maybe not. I've been working with people with Parkinson's for over 8 years. It's been my pleasure to do so. I've worked with a lot of incredible folks. Some of you are on here now. And yeah, so let's just discuss a little bit about what you might see in people with Parkinson's related to thinking and social skills, and kind of what support you might want to get, or some considerations you may want to take. So I think John Kalaya once told me there are like 5,000 symptoms associated with Parkinson's, something like insane. And that makes a lot of sense, because someone walks into my office and I hear something new every day. And I'm like, really? Is that from the Parkinson's, or that's associated with the Parkinson's? Yes. So this is just a laundry list of cognitive communication symptoms associated with Parkinson's. Difficulty understanding or more slow processing of the information that's provided, difficulty with finding words. And I know everyone's going to say, yeah, as we get older, that happens, right? And I know that is a natural occurrence, but in some folks with Parkinson's, that's a little bit faster, the word finding difficulty, or a little more pronounced. There's a sensory perceptual deficit, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again for those of you who have not heard me speak. This is so important. People with Parkinson's, more often than not, are not aware of the difficulties they're having. Some of them are very aware, but a lot of them are not. So for instance, when I ask them to speak with intent, or I say, please speak louder, they'll say, no, my voice is too loud, like in a waiting room. My voice is too loud and I can barely hear them. Or Nancy needs a hearing aid, right? My wife, my partner, my spouse, whatever needs a hearing aid. My voice is fine. Or, yeah, my memory is pretty good. And then the person behind them is like, so that sensory perceptual deficit, or that difficulty in being aware of those deficits, is something that I see often. And that's something worth considering, that people, your loved one, your friend, may not be aware of the difficulties that they're having, and that's not their fault. So just be mindful of that. Attention and focus. So whether it's difficulty sustaining attention when the TV's on in the background, a big one, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this, is difficulty multitasking, right? Difficulty writing something while listening to something, difficulty using intent while thinking about what they want to say. That's multitasking, doing two things or more at once, driving and thinking about where they're going. Those are multitasking things. And attention to details. And I always say my husband has terrible attention to detail, because the kitchen always has something on the counter that he didn't see. But attention to detail is just like really and truly paying attention to the little things, whether it be visually or even in listening. Like if you give your husband or wife a list of things to do, maybe they were paying attention to just a piece of that. Memory. So we've talked about memory in all different contexts, listening to information and storing it in your brain. That's immediate memory. Short-term memory would be like, what did I have for breakfast again? And I know that sometimes is associated with age, but it can be more pronounced in people with Parkinson's. And long-term memory, sometimes people, as Parkinson's progresses, can have a little bit of difficulty with remembering long-term memories, like when did I get married, or remembering my son's birthday, things like that. And again, this may not show in any symptoms, or this could, your person who you know with Parkinson's could have a lot of these symptoms. And some of you are nodding your head, I see. Problem solving. So like kind of getting stuck in the moment of like, what should I do first, or what should I do in this scenario? Safety awareness. I've seen a lot of people, like if they have weakness in their legs, maybe getting up fast and not being aware that that's not safe, or trying to hold on to something that's kind of wobbly, that's not safe. So not really being aware of things that are safe versus not. Difficulty with organizing and planning, scheduling. Some people may not have been great at that before, that's okay. Reasoning and decision making, maybe getting overwhelmed by too many decisions that they have to make, or too many choices. Orientation is like remembering the day of the week, the month, the year, where are we? Mental flexibility, some people really get stuck in their ways, and sort of can't see beyond their feelings or their preferences. And some people, depending on medications and or symptoms, may have hallucinations. So some things that can make all or any of these things worse. Sorry, guys, I advanced too fast. Depression or feeling sad, right? We're not always so focused if we're feeling sad. We're kind of in a daze sometimes. Anxiety, same thing. Those anxieties can really be the forefront of our thoughts, and maybe we're not focusing or we're not remembering because that anxiety piece is really hindering how we're thinking. Fatigue, if we're feeling sleepy, or people with Parkinson's are feeling sleepy, this could really be a hindrance to thinking and communication abilities. Sleep disturbance, of course, can cause fatigue or sleepiness. And then on or off times. So I hope you all are familiar with this, but with dopaminergic drugs or drugs that stimulate the production of dopamine, like carbidopa, levodopa, Sinemet, things like that. People have on and off time. So on would be like, yeah, my meds have kicked in, I can do this, I'm gonna rock this thing. And then off times where like maybe energy is a little lower, or at least the symptoms that they're looking to reduce with the medications kick in. So all of those things can be exacerbating or contributing to these cognitive impairments and communication impairments. Am I okay speed-wise and information-wise, guys? Some of you are probably familiar with some of this. Is this an okay level and we're good to continue? Okay, cool. All right, so some options. Obviously, therapy, speech therapy is great if you want to work on like in the home or fine motor skills related to cognition. Occupational therapy can also support, and neuropsychology may also have some ideas, but I do speech therapy and we work on all of these things. So if that's something you're interested in, you get a prescription from your doctor for your loved one or friend, and it should say something like cognitive communication therapy or cognitive evaluation. I'm sorry? Was someone saying something to me?
No,
I apologize, Ali. I was talking with my wife. I
Oh, that's okay.
didn't mean to interrupt.
That's all right. Hi, Francisca. That's my friend. Okay, so yeah, so get a prescription for speech therapy and we can kind of go from there and decide what we like to do from a care plan standpoint. Some compensating ideas or compensatory strategies, we can talk about ways to find words faster through different strategies, like thinking of the alphabet, like when we try to think of a name, thinking of the alphabet, or organizing your brain like, okay, it's in a category like this and the subcategory of this. There are different ways that we can compensate for word finding, memory, etc. Also, alternative communication devices. That's something when communication is really severely impaired, there are devices that insurance covers, even Medicare covers it, I believe 80%. And sometimes you can get a supplementary insurance to cover it fully, where basically it's selecting, like it's kind of like on an iPad selecting different buttons that will communicate for you or supplement that word finding. So if you see the picture of the dog, it can say duh, and that person can say dog. Now that's maybe a more severe scenario, but just want to kind of throw out to you guys, these are the things that are out there. And if you're not sure what to do, consult your neighborhood speech language pathologist at JFK, that's me, or someone else locally in your area. Also, there are group speech and voice groups like the Speak Out. We have our Loud Crowds here, and we Have Parkinson's. Those are all things that can help cognitive communication, voice and speech as well. And even, well, actually, I think I'm going to talk about this in a second. I'm sorry. Yep, never mind. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But contact your local hospital, rehab center, speech language pathologist to find out if there are groups that are offered near you. Once someone has completed some of our speech therapy, we have these groups at JFK for free. So various ways to kind of promote that thinking, promote using your brain, because what do we know? If you don't use the muscle that you want to keep strong, you might have it turn weaker or use it or lose it, if you will. So there are various apps that you could use to exercise your brain. And guys, this is not just for people with Parkinson's. This is for caregivers. This is for loved ones. This is for family members. This is for people who just kind of want to keep their brain spry. These are the various apps on iPads and iPhones and Androids that I have used and people really like it. Most of them are for free, at least for a trial. So Memorando, Elevate, Lumosity, and Constant Therapy. There are a boatload of other ones. People like Wordle. Anything that you can do to really challenge your brain is good. There's not an exact science for that, unfortunately, because everyone's brain is different. So if you're looking for specific things that will challenge certain areas of your brain, again, you can ask myself or a speech language pathologist near you. Community centers, there are memory groups. There are memory groups and there are different cognitive things that they do over at senior centers for free. Please utilize that if you fit in that age criteria. Play along with television game shows. Pause it. I don't know if you guys, who's tech savvy, I have figured out how to do this where you can actually pause the television before you can respond. Think about it. Use intent to respond, and then see if you got the correct answer. Reading is really good. Talking with friends and family, so important. How often do we withdraw from those scenarios when we're having trouble communicating or finding words? Instead, do the opposite. Find someone you're comfortable with, or find someone else with Parkinson's, or find someone who can relate in some way to you and talk to them. Listening to the radio or audiobooks, podcasts, anything that you have to listen to and then try to challenge yourself to recall the details and talk to a friend about it. That's really good cognitive stimulation. Try to continue to perform your old responsibilities in some regard, like bill paying, like scheduling, like making phone calls. It doesn't have to be bill paying without any supervision. Perhaps if someone's having trouble with math, let's say, it could be doing it with someone, but that can at least keep your brain going with those types of tasks that you used to do instead of totally withholding from them. Learn a new hobby, learn a new language. Doesn't have to be a fluent language, but a couple of new words here and there could be fun. And taking a class of interest can also be really helpful for your brain. And some strategies to compensate. We've talked about this before, keeping a memory journal, using a daily schedule, going over the schedule with your loved one the night before if they have anxieties about the next day or what's on their to-do list. You can use Google Home, your phone, or Amazon Echo to set reminders. Create a memory station where your loved one, your friend, yourself, you always know, I always put my glasses here. I always put my glasses, my keys, my to-do list, and my purse in this spot by the door so I don't forget any of it. Create some kind of station. Keeping things as organized as possible so that person with Parkinson's knows where those things can be. They know where to expect those things to be. And I'm a real big fan of a personal planner or a portable calendar, but I know with writing difficulties that can sometimes be challenging unless another person's willing to write for them. Okay, so pragmatic language, this is social skills, and I won't keep you guys long. I just kind of want to put this in your heads just to think about. So I get a lot of complaints about like, my spouse won't initiate conversation, or it takes a lot for me to get a response. And sometimes that's the language processing, and it's taking a while for them to process what you're saying and then figure out the word that they want to say. And sometimes it's like a lack of initiation from a social skills standpoint. And it's, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's never that they don't want to communicate with you. Although the lack of motivation from dopamine, the lack of dopamine in the brain can also cause that. So please know, I'm speaking for all of my friends with Parkinson's to their loved ones and friends and family members, that it's not that they don't love you or care about you, it's their brain. I'm blaming the lack of dopamine. And I have a friend who says, damn those dopamines, because that's really the case. So reduce comprehension of social cues. So not understanding or picking up the cues that you used to, like not picking up on changes in facial expressions that can happen, not really understanding jokes any longer, poor attention to subtle changes in body language. Like if I'm going like this, you guys can't see me, but my arms are crossed, right? They may not necessarily pick up that you're mad until you tell them. Reduce theory of mind. So kind of really being in themselves and thinking about their thoughts and their desires and their wants and not really yours. These are all related to the Parkinson's. And then poor use of social language. So, I mean, one of the main characteristics of Parkinson's is not using facial affect, not using the face muscles the way that they used to. Reduced intention of initiating communication. So like we talked about, not really asking questions or anything. Impaired control of emotional reactions. Some people inappropriately laugh or can't stop crying. That's also related to that chemical change in the brain. Saying things that are inappropriate or inappropriately interrupting, things that might be offensive to you. Again, not ill-meaning or not on purpose. It's the Parkinson's. And last but not least, reduced impulse control. So maybe saying something again that they don't mean very quickly, and then they realize it's not appropriate. Or touching something that they shouldn't. I don't want to go there, but just giving some examples. So unfortunately, therapy is not always helpful for this, but I have done therapy with people related to social skills, and it has at least brought some awareness and attention to lack of initiation in conversation, or, you know, you have a little bit of a resting, not nice face on, and we kind of work on that, working on facial expressions. You know, maybe Nancy, you're on the top of my screen. I hope you don't mind, but maybe Nancy says, you know, this guy is really, every time that we go out to a restaurant, he says something inappropriate to a waitress or whatever. Okay. Sorry, Nancy.
John has done that. Oh.
Okay, that was perfect then, spot on. So maybe we talk through that, you know, next time, what kinds of things can you say or what kinds of things can you do? And if you say something inappropriate, let's have Nancy touch your leg really hard, squeeze your knee or something, you know what I mean? So just coming up with strategies. Sorry, John. That was a hypothetical. I didn't know anything.
Can I just tell a quick story?
Oh, sure.
Really quick story, which I think maybe I told you, but
yeah.
All right, so the mask of Parkinson's, I was having a conversation with my therapist, and I highly recommend having a talk therapist, but
I agree,
me.
1000%. I hope Dr.
And we were talking about it, and he said, you have to remember that that's the mask, it's the muscles that aren't working. It's not, you know, when I look at John very often, and I can say this publicly, he either looks bored, angry, dissatisfied, and I take it all personally. It's like, God,
that's
really?
good.
Am I really that awful? And the therapist said, you can practice with him changing those facial expressions. So for a while, and I haven't seen him for a while because he was at JFK, but for a while we worked on it. And so when I would come in the door, he'd go, "Hi, how are you?"
That's awesome.
And it helped. I mean, I knew he was faking it in a way, but it still was very helpful.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And even if John is excited to see you, right, he may not demonstrate that, not even because of the lack of the muscle movement, but also like not thinking to initiate that, right?
Right.
Nothing is automatic anymore when people have Parkinson's. Everything has to be intentional. And that's a really, really tough thing, not only for a loved one, but the person with Parkinson's. John, isn't that exhausting?
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. That's right. That's right. But you know, that's tough. And I can imagine it must also be tough to be the recipient of that. But John, what do I say instead? I'll ask, right? Are you feeling upset? How are you feeling? Right. So actually that's my next and last slide. Be patient. Try your best to be patient. It's okay to lose your cool. We're all human, but be patient, or try to be patient if you can. I wanted to say also, try to understand and remember that this person that you love is not trying to be not nice or rude or not loving. It's not it's the Parkinson's. They're not trying to be this way. Try to support them in social settings. Like, again, squeeze John's leg every time.
That would be a mistake.
Okay,
I
hit
don't
his
want to go there.
squeeze his hand. Okay, squeeze his hand. Do whatever your cue is. Like, put a smile on your face when you're trying to remind him, like, hey, like, you're looking a little sad in a really happy conversation. Some kind of cue that you guys can decide together to just remind that person, like, for some support and some help. You guys can mentally prep, like I said. Okay, John, we're about to go to a restaurant. Remember, like, try to interact. Let's have and let's ask questions 3 times per conversation or something. Like, create a goal or do something to set your loved one up for success. If that person with Parkinson's is comfortable with this is not great for everyone, but some people like this. You can give your company a heads up, like, hey, John, I'm sorry, John, you're at the top of my list, and so is Nancy. I hope you don't mind if I use you an example, but just like, hey, John's been having a really hard time communicating. Like, if you wouldn't mind initiating the conversation, I know he wants to talk with you, that kind of thing. But again, that's as long as they're comfortable with that. They may not be. And last but not least, you can provide feedback afterwards in private, in an appropriate setting, in a comfortable setting. Like, you know, I was watching and people were leaning in to try to listen to you. Did you catch that social cue? They're leaning in because I think they didn't hear you. Maybe you can watch that for next time. So those are just some of my ideas and suggestions. I think it's really important to remember the underlying issues and that it's not their fault. And it's something that you can work on as a team, Nancy, just like you said. And speech language pathologists are helpful for all the things, I think, at least. Does anyone have questions or anything? Oh, thanks, Steve. I'm so glad to
Great,
hear
thank
that.
you.
And thank you, Sonia.
Sonia.
Sonia. Thank you so much. Other questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns for me? I can put in the chat my contact information. I actually have a patient that just arrived, so I'm gonna run in a moment. I'm sorry to chat and run, but my contact information is here below, 7063. That's my department number. If you call, you can ask for me. And my email I'll send as well. I'm pretty great with email, or at least I try to be.
Great.
Thanks everyone for your time. Thank you so much for having
Thank you.
me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ally.
Hope
Thank
I'll
you.
see you again
Yeah.
soon.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Alan.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Good job.
I just want, John, I just want you to know, and I have to say it publicly, that this doesn't let you off the hook for bad behavior. You can't say, oh, it's that dopamine thing going on.
It's an excuse, though. It's a great excuse.
Anyway, nice to see everybody.
Same
Thank you.
here.
Yep.
Nancy,
you.
bye.
Have a
So
nice
long.
day.
See you all soon.
Bye.
Everybody.
Bye.
Hey, blessings.
Be well, everyone.